Alright, hello and welcome. So today I'd just like to reiterate on why enemy armor is like the biggest worry in the game and why it's the strongest thing in the game and why it makes the Grineer the most dangerous faction in the game. So to do that, we're going to have to look at my Opticore and what I have this thing set up to do. So, the Opticore. This is my build for the Opticore. I will be repeating this test until Split Chamber goes off and there are no criticals. That's the terms for this. It's very likely that Split Chamber will pretty much always happen, and my critical chance is very low, but I'd just like to get that out of the way before starting anything. Now, the enemies that I'm going to be testing against are the Heavy Gunner and the Corpus Tech. Now, the Heavy Gunner will be taking plus 50% damage from Puncture, meanwhile, the Corpus Tech will be taking minus 50% damage from Puncture. Slash and Impact are very low, but the Corpus will be taking a little bit more impact at plus 15%. As for Blast, the Heavy Gunner will be taking minus 25%, and there is no modifier on the shield portion, or any portion, of the Corpus Tech's health. As for Corrosive, the Corpus Tech is going to be taking minus 50% of this, meanwhile the Heavy Gunner is going to be taking plus 75% of this type of damage. So our big damages are out of the way with our modifiers. The Heavy Gunner is going to be taking significantly more damage from this weapon. Meanwhile, the Corpus Tech is going to be taking significantly less. So let's get started. Also, for anyone curious, this is what I'm using on Ivara. I'm not going to be getting headshots while in my 3, so this isn't increasing my damage at all. It's just making me invisible so I can line up an exact shot. So the enemy does not move. So let's grab some energy and go invisible. So I'm going to be testing this at enemy level 50, which I think is relatively moderate. It's usually what I take a weapon in against my general testing group of enemies and see if it's a good weapon or not. So let's do the Corpus Tech first. One level 50 Corpus Tech. Simulate that. Standing perfectly still. Line it right up on him. One shot, one kill. Even though he's resisting 50% of my largest physical damage type and my largest elemental damage type. Now let's take this over to the Grineer side, testing again at level 50 with a regular Heavy Gunner. There's our Heavy Gunner. Even with a critical, not killing this enemy. But, for posterity, let's do that again. Let's do another one, make sure it's not a critical hit. Split Chamber didn't go off, but it was a critical hit. So, it was worth testing again. No criticals, Split Chamber went off. Enemy is still alive, even though this enemy is taking massive damage. Like, huge damage. Plus 75% and plus 50% on my two big damage types. And minus 25% on my other big damage type. That means that this enemy has an insane amount of health. But why do they have an insane amount of health? I mean, obviously, the Corpus gets shields, and the Grineer get armor, and those things should be roughly comparable to each other, right? As levels increase, like, armor shouldn't just spiral out of control, should it? But it does. So, let's do some calculations to show you how much effective health each one of these units has. Because you'll see, the Heavy Gunner, the way that they scale up because of the way armor works, in that armor mitigates percentiles of damage, means that the higher levels get, the more insane the damage reduction gets. To illustrate that further, let's spawn in a level 80 Heavy Gunner. Level 80 Heavy Gunner, not moving around. That's the damage I got. Let's just shoot a couple more times with a critical. With nothing. That's the kind of health that we're talking about. Meanwhile, still on the Corpus side, at level 80, huge amounts of damage are being taken. And that enemy is resisting, or has no bonuses, on the huge majority of its health, and it's summoned a fucking Shield Osprey. The difference is insane. The difference between these two enemies, and like the way armor versus shields and health works, is insane. And that's why we have to work against armor so much, and why mods like Corrosive Projection are so powerful. Because whenever you add Corrosive Projection, you're removing a large part of damage reduction. It's not like a flat, like, you're doing 30% more damage. Oftentimes, it's the difference between doing, let's say, 95% reduced damage on an enemy, and like 89%, which is double damage. So yeah, that's armor. It's crazy.